Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq. Joining us for this segment, we have Ricardo Pero, CEO of SellersFunding. We're going to discuss how technology and access to capital are imperative for e-commerce businesses. Ricardo, it's great to have you with us. Welcome to Trade Talks.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here.
You got it. And tell us about navigating the many changes faced by the e-commerce industry over the past few years. What were the biggest obstacles and trends that you observed?
I mean, we saw since 2020 when COVID hit, we saw a big surge in e-commerce sales, right? And the obstacles came first and foremost on the logistics front. And things started in 2020, and last year we had that big crisis in the supply chain. So merchants across the board, it doesn't matter if you are a small business selling through a marketplace, or if you are a big retailer, if you're sourcing products abroad, you got hit by that crisis. You saw increasing costs in your logistics, and also a lot of delays in the delivery of products. So we see our clients now working with a much broader lead time from purchase order to sale, and that's putting a lot of pressure in their cash flow and cash management.
So Ricardo, tell me, where does SellersFunding fit in the ecosystem?
Yeah, since the beginning, we came up with a value proposition of offering flexible working capital solutions. The way we approach e-commerce and the way we approach our lending policy, e-commerce is a global industry, right? So it doesn't matter which country you're looking for. And taking Amazon, for example, our biggest online retailer. If you look at Amazon, in the US, 50% of Amazon sellers are US based. And then the other 50 are foreigners. If I would look only at the domestic sellers, I would be missing 50% of the addressable market. So what we did at SellersFunding, we did our homework, and we being in compliance and talking to regulators and applying for licenses in all major countries. So we have now operations in the US, Canada, UK, Europe, and we are expanding to other countries. So in a way, our idea is to support this cross-border flow, where we can provide working capital solutions for US sellers selling abroad and foreign sellers selling in the US.
And you've helped many traditional brick and mortar brands shift to e-commerce during the pandemic. Why are technology and access to capital imperative for e-commerce businesses?
So you need to rely on, and e-commerce in general allows you to rely a lot on standardized data. And with that data, you can use that data to leverage and plan better your sales. So with brick and mortar, you are subject to, a pandemic. You're subject to other factors, natural factors that can impact your sales. And you have also urban trends on depending on the cities and real estate development. E-commerce allows you to be in front of millions of consumers in open competition to reach out to that consumer in a way that plays the levels down the playing field. Yeah, right. Because you have small business competing neck to neck with big retailers for the end consumer. If you have a good product, you'll be able to compete in the marketplace.
Right. So why do supply chain challenges have to be approached financially and tactically from the e-commerce perspective?
So we see a lot, especially in the SME space. You have all this. We assume that there are over 1 million small businesses globally selling north of $500,000 annually. These small businesses face, like any other small business, they face a lot. The biggest challenge for them is access to capital. So when you go and you start offering your products online, yes, you have access to millions of customers, but also your logistic problems, your cash flow needs, they will the challenge that you face will scale it will be directly correlated to the size of the opportunity, right? And so that's what we are trying to address here at Sellers Funding, is be supportive from a technology and product offering point of view to support all the sellers.
So, Ricardo, let me ask you another question. We know how stressed the supply chain issue was because of the pandemic. We now have the Ukraine war that's happening. We know what it's going to do to the supply chain, and not even the supply chain, but the financial ecosystem, as well as global economies. And we still haven't worked out the supply chain kinks from the pandemic. How
Correct.
do you think this could potentially impact the consumer and, of course, e-commerce companies that you support? Or is it still too early to tell how these waves are going to ripple through the system?
Yeah, we are seeing already retail prices and inflation numbers picking up, right? It's I believe it's still soon to tell what will be what these merchants, the ability of these merchants to reprice their products in the marketplace and pass along the increasing costs that they have in the supply chain. I mean, we are seeing that, but what we are seeing the most, and based on the numbers that we follow here, we see a lot of pressure on margins, on profit margins, and we see smaller merchants going out of business. So I think it's going to be a natural selection, unfortunately, and we're going to see a spike in delinquent rates across the board for small businesses here in the U.S.
Right. Well, I mean, how could that potentially impact Sellers Funding, because you're helping to provide capital to many of these?
Yeah. So what we are doing here to mitigate that risk, we tend to work not only on the lending side, but we built throughout the past 2-3 years a very robust payments platform. So not only we have revenue streams on the working capital side, but we also provide payment solutions on cross-border payments, FX conversions, and that not only allows us to create additional revenue streams, but also reduce a lot of the operational risk that we have.
All right. Ricardo, it was great speaking with you. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.